Jets play on Monday Night Football with their season on the line. Mets play in the championship series of the National League, the NLCS tonight, Game 2. This is Connor Rogers' day. The fate of Connor Rogers' mood for the next, call it decade, maybe 15 years, rests on tonight and only tonight.
I'll be on no sleep tomorrow, so this could go one of two ways.
I
can feel like $1 million
tomorrow, or you could just be driving.
Or I won't be sitting here.
Or Kristen shows up
yes.
to take your job.
There you go.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. 2 for 3, boys. 2 for 3. Mets win, Rangers win, Jets disappoint.
Are we counting the Rangers' third game of the season against the Red Wings?
Oh, you betcha.
Big 3? Okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, you're rooting against the Red Wings all year, right?
Have you,
the degenerate you are?
Have you picked which hockey team you're going to bandwagon onto yet?
Not yet.
Yeah,
I like what the Maple Leafs are putting together.
Never a good choice. There are 7 hockey fan listeners out there like, oh, Jay, don't do that.
Jay likes to sort of wait until about mid-season. He'll toy and flirt with a few teams, and then about mid-season he's just like, oh, this is my team. I've always loved this team. Exactly. And then they'll lose him some money, and then it'll bounce, and then it'll go to another team. Yeah. Exactly.
Indeed. But as much as Javon Kinlaw tried to hurt you, Mark Vientos and Francisco Lindor delivered you. That was the one that you wanted.
That's what you care about.
This deep in the season, you need 3 more wins to go to the World Series. Yeah, that one mattered a lot.
All about the Mets.
And I'm here.
Everything's coming up, Connor. Yeah, you put like you did our show, you did Met stuff, you did SNY, Jets pre and post, and now you're back here today. And then I assume, because by the way, God forbid the Jets go 30 seconds without making more headline news.
It's ridiculous.
Let's get right into it, Connor, because it's not enough that Rodgers throws the refs and Mike Williams under the bus in the post-game press conference, and you guys lose a tough game. Which, by the way, if you guys had a field goal kicker, you'd be 4-2 instead of
amazing,
being right. You're 2-4, but if you had a field goal kicker, you'd be 4-2. But even with all that, because we had plenty to discuss, news comes into the desk just before we go on air.
It's official. The Jets have acquired Davante Adams. It's going to be a conditional third-round pick. We don't know the stipulations of what it can be. It can become a second. We don't know what it'll take to get there, but a conditional third-round pick. The Jets will be taking on that kind of money. So Aaron Rodgers, this is the best place to start. The quote after the game on the interception that the Bills had on the Mike Williams route was, it's 2 vertical routes. Allen Lazard is down the seam and Mike is down the red line. I'm looking at Allen. He puts his hand up and 3 guys go with him, so I'm throwing a no-look to the red line. And when I peek my eyes back there, Williams is running an in-breaker. He's got to be on the red line. It's the little things every single time. Davante Adams is already in the building.
It's the little things that's the killer line to me. It's the little things every single time. Just so, that one line makes it sound like, you know what, I've been working with Mike Williams. I've been trying to talk to him about all the details.
Yep.
Him and I have been going over the playbook, and it's just not happening. It's the little things that he always misses. The little things he always misses. You know, like, by the way, that's, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, anyway. Anyway, welcome to the CFL, Mike Williams, is what I would. Do you think he goes to the Rough Riders or the Rough Riders?
Yeah, it's not great. The thing is, though, can Davante Adams play defensive tackle?
Right, the Jets lost this game because they missed 2 field goals and they can't stop the run.
A lot of Aaron Rodgers slander. Aaron Rodgers was awesome last night. The offense was great. It's not his fault that Greg Zuerlein
Todd Downing was an upgrade, especially for Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, which we're going to get to the game in a little bit. But right now, the Davante Adams trade is the story of this and the fantasy implications it has, Matthew.
Yeah, and obviously this had to have been works for a while.
It's
going to come across as kind of an overreaction to a tough loss on Monday night, but obviously it's been in the works for a while. There's been a lot of conversation, so we'll break that down right now. We'll get into the Monday night game coming up here. And yes, for all of his post-game theatrics, the fact is that, yeah, I'm with you. Aaron Rodgers played very, very well. I actually don't even think that was – I don't know whether that was the wrong route or not, obviously, from Mike Williams, but I felt like that particular play, he just slipped. Like the turf at MetLife is not great.
Strikes
we all know this, right? And like he actually still, I thought Williams stayed present. Like, okay, I slipped. I'm on the ground. I'm going to still try to make a catch. And then the kid just makes a great interception.
Yeah, Taron Johnson makes a great
just
play.
Just an unbelievable play. And that's football. That happens. Anyway, whatever. We'll get to that. But why don't we break down what this trade means for the fantasy impact of everyone. For me, I'll start with Aaron Rodgers. It's good for him, right? He was already kind of a mid-tier QB2. He still doesn't really run that much, despite the fact that he cashed your quarterback rushing prop. I think he's somewhere on a weekly basis with everyone healthy and like no teams on bye. He's generally in the QB 12 to 15 range. As we're going through the bye weeks, he's probably going to be closer to QB 12-ish in that range. Like so, high-end quarterback 2, low-end QB 1, because he still doesn't run. But now he's got Garrett Wilson, Davante Adams, and Breece Hall out of the backfield with, let's be clear, a better play caller.
Yeah, that's right. Things looked really good for the Jets with Todd Downing in comparison to where they were with Nathaniel Hackett, their highest motion rate of the season. No surprise that led to more success. So I think, Jay, the combo, there's two things for me with Garrett Wilson specifically. One, he has the highest, most targets in the NFL. That is obviously going to go down with Davante Adams. But something that we saw last night that now gets to continue with Davante Adams is he gets to play in the slot where he looks like a number 1 wide receiver.
Yeah, absolutely. He seems to have really developed that rapport with Rodgers. Garrett Wilson could have had a lot more in this game too. He gets the touchdown, no fault of his own, but that gets knocked out of his hands. And I think this offense just overall seems to be humming a lot more. You mentioned the motion, Connor, which I think was a big thing and perhaps a sign that Rodgers is ceding some control of this offense because Rodgers doesn't like motion. He wants everything to be, he wants to set, he wants to be able to know exactly what he's looking at.
Yeah, he likes things static.
Yeah, so the fact that change is good. Just the offense overall just looked to be in a much better state, and now Davante comes in, and I don't think this really changes much in terms of like actions that you would make week to week in fantasy. You're still starting Garrett Wilson. You're going to start Davante Adams. You're going to start Breece Hall. Like, I think the main thing is like Allen Lazard after tonight was maybe looking like a viable flex guy week to week, and that probably isn't the case anymore if he's going to be the third guy. Tyler Conklin probably takes a bit of a hit as well. But now I think this becomes a much more clear and simplified offense for fantasy where it's Breece, Davante, Garrett, and Aaron. I
completely agree. I mean, Conklin comes down to like a low end, like barely top 20 tight end.
Desperation stream
right.
tight end.
And Lazard will still pop up with like 3 other touchdowns the rest of the year, but it'll be hard to predict when they're coming as well. But, you see the 5 touchdowns there, right? Allen Lazard's actually been a very productive, fantasy wide receiver so far this year. But again, 1 touchdown came in junk time from Tyrod Taylor. 1 comes on the Hail Mary last night, right? It all feels fluky. Of the 5 touchdowns, I feel like only 1, maybe 2 were like legit in the motion of a normal offense.
Yeah. And he dropped one against Minnesota that changed the game.
Right.
There's a reason they traded for Davante Adams.
For sure, obviously. So I think that Lazard, but I think the point of, even though it was kind of like a lot of weird fluky stuff, the fact is that Lazard, as we enter into week 7, is a top 20 fantasy wide receiver, just like Garrett Wilson is. So the point being that Aaron Rodgers in this offense, especially under the new play caller and Todd Downing, I think can support 2 mid-tier wide receiver 2s, which is what I think Wilson and Adams will ultimately settle in as. They're both, to your point, like there's not a really actionable item here because you're starting both guys, but if you were looking for trade value, that's where I would rank them. Yep. I would rank them both in the 10 to 20 range, probably in the 14 to 17 range, I think, going forward.
Yep. I'd still take Garrett Wilson over Davante Adams, though.
I agree,
I just think the talent is just in a different
younger,
level.
less injury prone.
Yeah. And they've been more creative with how they're using him. He's working out of the backfield. Like I said, he's playing the slot. It's just Garrett Wilson has been finally what we were hoping for the last 2 weeks when you drafted him with a first-round pick.
It's been a long time since Adams and Rodgers have played together, and there's obviously going to be a tremendous amount of shorthand. Rodgers is huge for changing the call at the line of scrimmage. He loves the little hand signals and everything like that. The quick throws, and there'll be eye contact between him and Adams, and they'll know exactly. Both guys will know exactly what's going on, and so you won't see Rodgers in the postgame going like he should have turned in when he went out or whatever. Like it's not going to happen. But it's still so there'll be a real nice shorthand here, but he's still got to. First off, he's got to get healthy. Like, we don't know how serious this hamstring injury is.
I think he's going to play.
My guess is,
he's
feeling a lot better. Apparently, he was on a red eye. He's apparently in New Jersey as of this morning. Yeah, exactly. But there's still going to be at least somewhat of a learning curve, right? I will rank here. Here's what I'll say here, and you tell me if you think I'm crazy. But when my rankings for Week 7 come out, Garrett Wilson will be ahead of Davante Adams in my weekly rankings.
I'm with you all the way, for sure. I think it might stay that way the rest of the season, though people are going to overreact to this the other way.
Yep, no, I agree. Little bit of movement in the Jets' futures odds after the Davante trade, but I think this is a trade that is much more about name value than perhaps actual impact towards winning going forward. Their Super Bowl odds remain static at DraftKings Sportsbook. The AFC Championship odds go from 15 to 1 down to 13 to 1, slight firm as well. In the odds to win the AFC East into plus 650, no change. Aaron Rodgers isn't going to win MVP. Davante Adams isn't going to win Offensive Player of the Year. The Jets-Steelers line did move from Steelers 1.5 point favorites to Jets -1.5. I don't think that's so much about Davante Adams.
I agree.
I think that's mostly just that's an upgrade based on how the Jets offense performed in general last night, and maybe just a bit of a latent movement there. So, look, I think that Davante, he clearly helps. It doesn't hurt to just add Davante Adams and not lose anything off your roster that's going to help you for this season, but their issues are more, I think, elsewhere, offensive line, defensive
Yeah, I mean,
line.
that's honestly what they should have said is, tell you what, we'll pay. Apparently, they're not paying a dime of Davante Adams' salary. But if I was the Jets, I would have said, tell you what, we will pay all of Davante Adams' salary, but when you send him over, you got to bring Max Crosby and Daniel Carlson with him.
Yes.
Daniel Carlson.
That one
Daniel
just as
Carlson's
important.
the key to the.
Don't undersell that.
I'm not.
Yeah.
You guys are with a legitimate, reliable kicker. You guys are 4-2.
That's insane.
You guys are 4-2.
That's the thing. For all the hand-wringing about the Jets, like Zerline makes 3 different kicks, and Rodgers connects with Wilson in London, and they're 5-1.
Yeah.
Like a game out of the 1 seed.
Literally 4 plays away from being 5-1.
The Niners game was the only game they really
They
lost.
deserve to lose, like, for sure.
Yeah.
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 And that's probably part of the reason. I know a lot of people will laugh and mock this trade, and I get there's a lot of reasons to do that, but this is an all-in year for the Jets. They need to make the playoffs to save their jobs. That's why Davante Adams is here.
Yeah.
And by the way, tough loss, tough divisional loss. But, again, the AFC doesn't seem that imposing this year. The game was a mess. Buffalo, I don't know that you feel better about Buffalo after last night. We'll get into that
Buffalo
game.
defense isn't great.
No. The Jets
don't
moved
have
the
a
ball.
receiver who can separate.
The Jets moved the ball. Like, this is going to sound insane to say because they're 5-0, but like to me, the Chiefs are the least impressive 5-0 team I've ever seen in my life. Like they just,
The NFC is weird.
It feels weird that they're 5-0, right? I mean, I don't know. Like
The Bengals scratched and clawed to win against the Giants.
Baltimore's the best team.
That's what I was going to say. Baltimore's 4-2, and the Chiefs are 5-0. And I don't know what the betting market says right now because I haven't looked at the futures for today in terms of Super Bowl odds, but I feel like I'd rather the Ravens at 4-2 than the Chiefs at 5-0. I get it, Andy Reid and Mahomes, and
I think
they've
it's more
been there,
just
done
about
that.
like the Chiefs they've got 2 fewer losses than the Ravens and the tiebreak, so they're just so
They're
much
gonna
better
have
place
home
to get
field.
the bye and home field, and to me that matters more than the Ravens being slightly better. And it's still Patrick Mahomes, it's still Spags and Andy Reid. So I think the Chiefs are the most likely team to win the Super Bowl, but I do think the Ravens are the best team right now.
Yeah, I will. Other side of the ball, let's trade real quickly. Let's get there with the Raiders.
Right, put a bow on this one.
I think that if you drafted for the rest of the season yesterday, Brock Bowers is the number 1 tight end. But I think now there's this very strong argument that he's a first-round pick because I think that all that target share that was going to Davante Adams goes to Brock Bowers, who's already leading this team, right? I mean, Jacoby Myers gets an upgrade here. He didn't play last week. Hopefully when he'll be healthy, he'll be a focal point of this passing offense as well. But I think that's the order. It goes Brock Bowers, then Jacoby Myers. Trey Tucker, I think, for maybe deeper leagues, but like he had a ton of opportunity last week and just didn't earn a bunch of targets.
Yeah,
he's a smaller guy, and I just, for me, I think those are the winners here on the Raiders side of the ball is, uptick if there's possible to Brock Bowers. Jacoby Myers, I think, is pretty interesting. We talked about him last week on the Waiver Wire show. And then obviously, like, you're not starting Aiden O'Connell or Minshew or, whoever they're throwing out there.
Yep.
In League of Assholes, you might be surprised on a bye
Yeah, that's
week.
fair. That's fair.
You might be surprised.
I might be. I'm never surprised with our league, to be perfectly honest.
We'll have more on where our league stands later. Let's jump into Waiver Wire because we know that is why you're here. You need help. Waiver Wired running backs. One quick note, just 2 teams on a bye this week, the Bears and the Cowboys. So if you need one of those running backs to save your season, well, you might be in a bad place anyway. Let's start with the Vikings running back, Ty Chandler. He's got the Lions, 72% available. Aaron Jones, with that hip injury, participated in a light practice on Monday, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, but they're calling him like week to week, not day to day.
It's significant to me.
The designation felt like there was a slight change there. I think there's a chance that Aaron Jones misses this week. It's a home game against the Lions, which is one of the best run defenses in the NFL. But after Aaron Jones left his game the last time the Vikings played, 83% of the snaps for Ty Chandler. His 4 starts last season, Ty Chandler got 15.3 touches per game, weeks 15 through 18. So I think Ty Chandler, just because of how good the Vikings offense is and because Jones has been injury prone at previous stops in his career, and it sounds like this injury might linger longer than we thought, Ty Chandler is probably my number 1. But again, it's all sort of dependent on who you have, who you need, that kind of stuff. I don't love Chandler this week either. You see this tweet here from Kevin Seifert, who covers the team for ESPN, saying Aaron Jones was on the practice field today, a light bonus session coming out of the bye. I still wouldn't say he's a lock he'll play Sunday. Kevin does a great job, has covered the Vikings and lives in that area for a long, long time.
Yep. Stunned that the Vikings are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I think Detroit's better than Minnesota, even without Aiden Hutchinson, so I'd be back in the
Think
Lions
the reckoning's
plus 2.5.
coming?
Yeah, I just
After you
don't-
traded me Sam Darnold?
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy that this is a game that's potentially for the 1 seed, or at least have 1 seed stakes. In the quarterback showdown between the 2 potential 1 seed teams, I think Jared Goff is clearly the better quarterback, which shows you it's just strange that Darnold v. Goff potentially for the 1 seed. Now, Goff was awesome last week. Darnold's had a really good season, but yeah, I do think the reckoning is coming a little bit for Minnesota at some point.
So we'll see there, but Ty Chandler certainly would be a top 12-ish running back every week. That it'll be slightly downgraded this week against Detroit because how good their run defense is. But as long as Aaron Jones is out, he's a borderline RB1.
Our next running back that meets our availability threshold, no show carries the flag for Tyrone Tracy. You can clap it up, Jay. You're a part of the
You
show.
clap it up. And by the way,
Clapping
I've seen some victory lapping on Tyrone Tracy on the social media
Not
out
from me.
there. No, not from you. But you, of all people, deserved I quickly jumped on the bandwagon, but honestly, I'll be perfectly honest. The reason I jumped on the bandwagon as quickly as I did is because Connor Rogers told me, come on in, the water's warm, and I jumped on the bandwagon, I jumped in the pool, and by the way, for everyone out there victory lapping, oh yeah, we talked about him in August, we talked about him on draft night. Pete, roll the receipts.
This is my sleeper in the draft. I feel like nobody cared about him all year. Really tested well in everything. He's going to get on the field early because he can block. He blocked at wide receiver for Iowa for so long. He can catch the ball, true 3-down player. And I know teams are on this guy. Analysts, I have not seen much love for him.
Look at the Giants taking Tyrone Tracy Jr. out of Purdue.
Our guy.
We've talked about him a lot now, and you drafted him in Dynasty with a pre-draft Dynasty draft.
I got to give full credit to Connor Rogers. Connor Rogers gave me Tyrone Tracy, and I was just like, I don't know, it feels a little early, and you're like, just trust me, do not leave your draft without Tyrone Tracy. This is what Connor Rogers said to me over text. We have a secret text, Jay Croucher. Screw you. Yeah, that's exactly right. So one of my Dynasty leagues, we do our rookie draft before the NFL draft. So the idea is it's purely on talent and not about where their landing spot is. It's a 12-team Dynasty league, a bunch of other people in the industry. And yeah, I made Tyrone Tracy my 3rd-round pick in that rookie draft, thanks to Connor Rogers in April. You see those clips there from March and April. So you deserve a victory lap. So yeah, I feel like everything's coming up. The Mets, Rangers, and Tyrone Tracy.
Davante Adams.
Davante Adams. Well, you got podcast topics for the next 3 days.
That's right. That's right. It does help pay the bills.
Yeah.
People forget this.
But anyway, Tyrone Tracy, here's my question to you, Connor Rogers. As the first guy on the Tyrone Tracy bandwagon, is the guy driving the bus. Played 84% of the snaps in Week 6. He handled 23 of the 26 running back touches. He's had 2 games as a starter where he's averaged 18.4 fantasy points per game. He's had 21 touches per game. And finally got, in the first game, he wasn't actually involved in the passing game, which was weird, given his profile as a former college wide receiver for much of his college career at Purdue. But last week, 16.7% target share. They used him in the passing game. He looked every bit the part of a workhorse franchise, bell cow running back, and he wasn't the reason the Giants didn't come away with a victory against Cincinnati. My question to you, Connor Rogers, is not only the driver of the Tyrone Tracy bus, but as a member of the New York media.
What a lead-in.
Yeah. Will the Giants turn to him as their lead running back when Devin Singletary comes back? Because some beat reporters out there, none of them Connor Rogers, but some beats out there have suggested that could potentially be in play.
It has to, right? Because for me with the Giants right now, and the season's not over for the Giants, their front seven's playing really tough, they're staying in games, but it's now about showing what the future holds for Brian Dable to be the head coach of that team.
Sure.
Their best running back is Tyrone Tracy. I understand he has the relationship with Devin Singletary, and Devin Singletary's not going to go anywhere, but the best part of that is, we showed it on the video there, his screen game. Dable draws up a great screen game. Tyrone Tracy, 6 catches for 57 yards. He could do that every single week. So, Jay, I think he's going to be the lead back of this offense. I think Singletary will eat into the carries, but Tracy has to be the pass catcher, and that makes him fantasy viable, besides the fact that he's got big playability as well.
Yeah, mainstream media won't focus enough on the fact the New York Giants are a respectable outfit as well. They deserve to beat the Bengals. Their success rate was better than the Bengals. They just got screwed by kicking. And a random Joe Burrow running in a 47-yard touchdown or whatever. So I think the Giants are very solid, and I think that matters for Tyrone Tracy because I don't think they're going to be getting blown out that often. They're basically field goal underdogs against the Eagles this week. Eagles don't have an amazing run defense at the moment. So, yeah, I think Tyrone Tracy is going to be viable every week.
And I think, again, as you go into your waivers, everything is sort of league-specific and team-specific in needs. You know, we try to order them for you. But the truth of the matter is like, if I need somebody this week, I feel better about Ty Chandler as we sit here on Tuesday. Now, if Aaron Jones is suddenly a full participant in practice, then whatever. But Ty Chandler, in theory, should get a larger workload this week, assuming Singletary is back. But long-term, for the rest of the season, you feel better about Tyrone Tracy, you know, not only continuing to have a lead role, but, you know, getting better and stronger as the season goes on. Tracy only available in 55% of Yahoo leagues, whereas Chandler's out there in 72% as well. So obviously availability matters when you're making your selections as well.
Another rookie running back, Ray Davis of the Bills, 87% available against the Titans. No James Cook for the Bills on Monday night, Jay. No problem. Ray Davis looked awesome.
I'm going to make a prediction. I think Ray Davis takes over this backfield. I think.
Really?
Whoa!
Yeah, I think
That's crazy talk.
No, Nate Tice was talking on Twitter about how Ray Davis is a better fit for this rushing offense than James Cook.
He's more downhill.
Yeah, he is more downhill, and I think that they just found a bit more of an identity with him. Like, James Cook is great, but James Cook was like the 63rd pick in the draft. It's not like they spent a pick like Bijan Robinson in the top 10. So I think there is a chance, not necessarily that he usurps Cook entirely, but I think he's going to be a part of this offense going forward.
I think that's fair, and we can get more into that when we talk about the game. And I'm a big Nate Tice fan. I think he's really smart, does a great job, big fantasy player, so he understands the implications of everything he says. But I'll say that this is a team that last year was giving touches to Damian Harris and Latavius Murray. Like I don't think they suddenly go away from James Cook. I think the better argument for Ray Davis is that, right, he's earned a role in this offense, and that James Cook goes from a borderline RB1 to more of a mid-tier, low-tier RB2. You know, less of a guy that's like you're ranking in the top 10 to 12 every week to more of a guy you're ranking in the top 15 to 20 depending on matchup here. Because Davis, certainly they'll take one of the pro James Cook arguments this year. One of the nice storylines has been that he's been getting a lot of the goal line and red zone work, and I think you could see Ray Davis certainly eating into that.
Yeah, definitely. I just think it's a hugely positive indicator for Ray Davis in a massive game for the Bills that they were willing to give him 20 carries in what was expected to be potentially a timeshare with Ty Johnson. It was entirely Ray Davis's backfield. I just don't think that he's going to be now, relegated to 4 or 5 carries a game.
I don't think look. I wasn't in the room, so I don't know, but I don't get the sense that that's what they went into the game intending to do. Ty Johnson got the start here. I got asked on Twitter once the James Cook thing. It's been a weird year, by the way, for reporting. Right? I mean, Chris McCaffrey's fine.
Weird as in really bad?
Yes.
Or a lot of misses?
A lot of misses.
James Cook is definitely playing Monday.
Playing. According to his agents, he's definitely playing.
Sorry, Big
Anthony
Show.
Richardson
Tough loss
on
for
the
you.
weekend.
What?
Anthony Richardson on the weekend.
Anthony Richardson as well.
Quarterback for the Colts.
He's back. Reporting has been very shoddy this year. Or inconsistent. Shoddy is maybe not the right word. Inconsistent. Reporting's been inconsistent. In a league in where there are fantasy implications and there are betting implications, that stuff matters. But that's for another podcast, that's for another show, that's for another conversation. What I will say here is that based on the previous usage of once Cook was announced out, I'll just cop to this. I went to Twitter and I said, I think the pivot is Ty Johnson and Ray Davis in that order to replace James Cook. And then I got this tweet from this guy.
Somewhat happy fan.
Somewhat happy Eagles fan. Alan Lazard, 24 points. Ty Johnson, 3.4. Guess who I started? Thank you at Matthew Berry TMR for your awesome advice. Not.
I like the hashtag fantasy football.
Hashtag fantasy
Just
football.
So everybody finds this tweet.
That's from T Allen 4383. Definitely not a burner account. And I quote tweeted it because whatever. I'm fair game. I put my opinions out on there in public. Roast me all the time.
Thought the same thing.
Whatever. And I don't really read my mentions, but this one somehow popped into my feed, and I was just like, I don't care that you want to call me out for getting Ty Johnson over Ray Davis wrong. I did. Asked and answered, right? Ty Johnson had gotten – I had heard that Ty Johnson, they trust him a lot more in pass pro, and in the previous 3 games, he'd played basically like double the snaps to Ray Davis. So that's how I went with Ty Johnson. And Ty Johnson got the first carry. He got the start. But Ray Davis just got hot. He caught that long pass. He caught the long pass on the broken play, the off-schedule play from Josh Allen, and it just sort of felt like Ray Davis was just red hot from that point forward, and they just kept feeding the hot hand. So I don't know that they went in with that intention. But I'm just going to say this to whatever, T Allen 4383.
Somewhat happy Eagles fan.
Somewhat happy Eagles fan. How dare you use a not joke. My first recollection of the not joke was the Wayne's World Saturday Night Live sketches, which was in the early 90s. I mean, it's almost over 30 years ago. But we had Big Show, because this is what we do on our show. This is what we do on our, we make Big Show, our show researcher, look up this dumb crap. And so Big Show looked it up, and apparently, like, there was a not joke in the
1800s.
1800s.
Yes, seriously.
Right.
During the Civil War.
Yeah, I mean, it was like unbelievable. I mean, you know, like I'm trying to look up the where the
it's actually
the note
Fyodor
here.
Dostoevsky.
The Princeton Tiger in 1893. Sorry, thank you, Pete, got in my ear. The Princeton Tiger. There was a not joke in the Princeton Tiger in 1893 years ago. So So there you go, Eagles fans. Like, you're screaming at Nick Sirianni and you're making jokes that are 131 years old. I don't care that you come at me. Just come at me with some A material, even B material. For the love of God, you know what that is? It's a 3-2 joke. It's a third place in the NFC East kind of joke. That's what you guys are. There you go.
It's your own coach yelling at your own fans level.
Kind of joke. I mean, that's what it is. That's where you guys are at. Your coach is yelling at the fans, everything like that. You guys.
Ready for the end of the Sirianni era, to be honest.
I think everyone in Philadelphia is too.
Yeah.
They're ready for it too.
100%.
Pretty brutal.
Hey, Nick Sirianni, you're coming back as coach next year. Not. Hello. Thank you, comedy. Oh, my God.
Save that.
It's embarrassing.
It'll be good one day.
That guy deserved to lose his fantasy matchup. Because, by the way, I didn't tell him to bench him over Lazard. I just said, Ty John, if you're pivoting at running back.
Lazard was a weird throw-in.
That was a weird throw-in.
You would have.
I don't know that I would have, actually. I don't know that I would have. Just because, Lazard got the Hail Mary is just so fluky, right? You know what I mean? That's
Still Lazard. I don't think we would be starting him over the Bills' theoretical starting running back.
I don't know. I honestly don't. I'll be honest. Like, I would be honest because I'm owning my call here. But I don't know that what I would have said there because I knew it was, huh?
I would have.
Whatever.
I would have gone with Ty Johnson over Aaron Lazard. Yeah, that's all right.
What I probably would have said, be honest with you, I probably would have said, and then we'll move on. I probably would have said Johnson's likely the floor play because he's likely going to get at least 12 touches in this game against in a good matchup. Lazard is the risky reward play because he's only got a shot at having a touchdown with Rodgers back there, but he's also like a guy that can be completely gone from this offense.
Our next running back,
how I would have answered it.
Jaylen Warren. 58% available against the Jets. Warren coming off a week against the Raiders in his return. He had 6 carries, only 7 yards. He caught 3 passes for 11 yards. But, Jay, we've seen this Jets front is having a lot of problems right now. The Steelers are probably going to come into this game very run-heavy.
Yeah, I don't think this Jets front is solvable with the personnel they have. The Bills were just running on them at will despite not having any receivers who can separate. And theoretically, the Jets could have adjusted for that. Jaylen, I know Najee Harris had the big game, but Najee Harris just hasn't looked great until he played what is left of the Las Vegas Raiders.
He had one big play. He had one unbelievable play that sort of made his day. If you look at the snaps, right, 34% of the snaps for Warren in his first game back. He was targeted on 33% of his routes. I would argue Najee Harris is actually a sell high.
Definitely.
And I'm interested. I think Jaylen Warren's the better running back. They're both going to be involved, but it's going to be a run-heavy offense. Looks like Justin Fields solidified his starting role for a little bit longer as well, which helps the run game because of the mobility of Fields. So Warren, who's out there in 58% of the leagues, I like him, by the way. Jets, Giants, bye, Commanders are the next 4 for the Steelers. So all teams that you can run on.
Our next running back, Sean Tucker, he's available in 99% of leagues. Nobody saw this coming from Sean Tucker. Just a monster Week 6 against the Saints. And his coach, Todd Bowles, spoke about the great performance this week.
Worthy of him making this kind of a 3-headed monster at running back for you guys now?
It's definitely worthy of him making this a 3-headed monster. He took advantage of his opportunities. He ran away from some tackles, some linebackers. He ran through the hole. He cut back. He made some great plays. He caught the ball well out of the backfield. So that gives us 3-headed monsters.
By the way, that's a bad question because what the question should have been is, could he replace Rachaad White? And instead whoever asked that question gave Bowles a way to avoid the question, saying like could have. In essence,
they're all going to play.
They're all going to play, whereas. Easily,
not enough touches for all 3 to play.
I don't know that there's enough touches. It's an explosive offense, and the positives here are there's only 2 teams on a bye, and they play Baltimore. You don't love the matchup, so I think you're probably avoiding the Tampa Bay running back game this week if you can, and you just sort of see how it plays out, see how the snaps and the usage and the touches go on Monday night, because hopefully you don't need any of them. But certainly Sean Tucker, given the explosiveness, given the fact that Rachaad White, guys, last year wasn't particularly good. We talked about this on yesterday's show. Like, he was mostly fantasy relevant because of pure volume. He wasn't particularly efficient. I don't think to the eye test. I think he's the third. I think he's the worst running back of those three.
Yeah.
So, he's not somebody that they used a ton of draft capital on.
No.
Like, this is a team that wants to win the Super Bowl this year, that has legitimate playoff aspects. I mean, they're great. They're rolling.
And you just look at what Tucker brings to the pass game.
Yeah.
And they have Bucky Irving already that brings that element to the pass game. It's just, we talk about this all the time, Jay. Last year, Rachaad White, he was fantasy relevant because of the volume. None of it was to do with efficiency. And Tucker and Irving look more efficient than him right now.
He was fantasy relevant because Dave Canales was obsessed with running for 3 yards on first down, time after time. Last year, the Bucs were 15th in pass rate over expected. This year, they're 3rd. They've modernized their offense. Rachaad White is very like 2023 Cam Akers-ish kind of vibes, where it's like, I was told that this guy had a stranglehold on the job and was going to get a ton of volume. It's, well, if he's not that good, then someone else can usurp him. So, yeah, I think that Tucker becomes super interesting. And I think that Rachaad White, like in terms of ceiling, he might be the 3rd now in this backfield.
By the way, I might try to we think Tucker is somebody worthy of picking up, but again, like, we have him lower on the list because we think there's questions about how much playing time he'll get. I actually think Bucky Irving is an interesting buy low because for as much as Tucker had, this unbelievable game, he still only played 38% of the snaps, right? And Bucky Irving was out there more, and I think that if you were trying to project snaps and touches going forward, Bucky Irving is the guy that you feel like the best about getting the majority of work in the near future for Tucker. Tucker had some really nice plays. He had the one big play, obviously, as well. Really nice player. Love him at Syracuse. Again, if we'd run him a little bit more in the second half, we'd have beaten Syracuse.
Clemson.
We'd have beaten Clemson, and Dino Babers might still have a job. Just saying. But serves him right, whatever. And you see the play here for Tucker wearing the 44, a legendary number in Syracuse as well. But I actually think Bucky Irving, because of all the hype around Sean Tucker, is kind of a buy low. I'll rank Bucky Irving higher than Sean Tucker this week.
Agreed. This Bucs offense, this is an offense you want to be buying shares in if you can get it. Because right now, like, they are an elite offense. And also, they have a brutal month coming up where I believe they play Baltimore Monday Night Football, then Falcons, Chiefs, Niners.
Correct.
After that, though, it gets real nice for the Bucs. And so the way this offense is playing, like, there is a chance that, Sean Tucker, Bucky Irving, one of these guys could be a league winner.
Again, Bucky Irving played 64% of the snaps. They got the same number of rush attempts. I get it. Sean Tucker had the big play. It was a goofy game. Yeah. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Sean Tucker. Love Sean Tucker. Go Qs.
Yeah.
But Bucky Irving, I think, because of all the hype around Tucker, might be a little bit of a buy low opportunity.
Yet another rookie running back on our waivers list here, Isaac Guerendo against the Chiefs. He's available in 96% of leagues. Jordan Mason dealing with that shoulder injury. He did participate in Monday's practice with a non-contact jersey. So, Matthew, we really got to keep an eye on this one throughout the week. Also, it's no lock that Guerendo is the guy right away in this backfield, even if Mason is out.
After Jordan Mason went out with the injury, Patrick Taylor actually led the Niners backfield in snaps. And he got 4 of the 6 red zone touches. Patrick Taylor did. Now, again, Guerendo had that one big play, but played only 38% of the snaps. He ran only 2 routes. He's not somebody that's going to be used in the passing game as well. And if Jordan Mason isn't going to play this week and McCaffrey isn't back, which is not expecting, right? Then yes, you'll see some Guerendo, but you'll see some Patrick Taylor. You'll probably see a little bit more Kyle Juszczyk. They'll probably use Deebo Samuel in the backfield a little bit more. They'll get creative and they'll do a bunch of weird stuff. And so I would not go crazy trying to get Guerendo. One of the reasons why we have Sean Tucker ranked ahead of Guerendo, and I've seen a lot of people out there saying, Guerendo should be the number 1 guy on the waiver wire, and I don't agree with that at all, because Sean Tucker has a chance at becoming the number 1 running back for the Buccaneers. Obviously, injury, if Rachaad White's injury is worse, but also because he just might be the best running back on that team. Again, I still have Irving over Tucker at the moment, but there's literally no scenario which Guerendo goes over Jordan Mason or McCaffrey other than injury. Like, guys like Tucker, Jaylen Warren, Ray Davis, Tyrone Tracy, they could legitimately take over their backfields just because they're better, not only because of injury opportunity. Guerendo has no shot at doing that other than just he's the only guy left. And if he's the only guy left, there's still going to be Taylor, Juszczyk, Debo in the backfield.
Our last one here, Jay, Kimani Vidal, the rookie running back for the Chargers. He's available in 89% of leagues. You love the matchup against Arizona. He only had 4 carries for 11 yards, but of course he caught the big touchdown in this game.
He did, which is perhaps a little bit unsustainable. I mean, he
Yes.
played 19 snaps, which is an issue. J.K. Dobbins got 25 carries. Like, the idea that J.K. Dobbins is going to be nursed back in because of his injury history, no. Like, he's just a workhorse back, and he's a guy who I still, like, J.K. Dobbins easily could have had 140 rushing yards in that game, but because it was 25 for 96, perhaps didn't get the hype that it should have, so he would be the guy I'm trying to buy. Vidal, though, is clearly ahead of Hassan Haskins. It's the backup. Gus Edwards is on IR, and Dobbins does have an injury risk.
That's the point.
So that is where the upside
Gus Edwards
comes
is
from.
missing at least the next 3 games. There's an injury history with Dobbins, and so Vidal is a injury away from being the lead running back of one of the run-heaviest teams in the NFL. Just quickly on him from a college profile for people that may not be familiar with him, because he was a day 3 pick.
Yeah, very small, explosive runner, but somebody that I thought looked great in outside zone, and you want to get him in space in the pass game, which they did. You could see him run the wheel route. You could see him get down the sideline. So you're kind of hoping Vidal can become a Jaylen Warren type of player. That's what I would be looking for.
And by the way, and there's a scenario where Gus Edwards, he overtakes some of the snaps that even when Gus Edwards comes back as well. Some deep league ads, some insurance running backs, if you will. Like Tyler Allgeier continues to get run and yet continues to be available in 70% of leagues. Like,
crazy.
He's getting double-digit work on a pretty good offense. Blake Corum, obviously, is the backup to Kyron. Jaylen Wright, remember the Dolphins were on bye last week, but we don't know the status yet of Davante Adams, who was in the concussion protocol. Wright looked good last week with 86 yards, played 38% of the snaps after Davante Adams left. Dearness Johnson, I just want to mention as well. Travis Etienne week to week with a hamstring injury. Dearness Johnson would take the passing game role. They're not going to use Tank Bigsby in the passing game, and this is an offense, the Jaguars, they're going to have to be passing quite a bit. You see Pierre Strong and Emmanuel Wilson there as well, obviously backups. We should see Nick Chubb this week, and it's worth noting that Jonathan Brooks, they have opened up the practice window for Jonathan Brooks to return to the Panthers. What his role will be when he comes back, we're still waiting, but Jonathan Brooks at least on a practice field this week.
To recap your Week 7 running back waiver targets, Ty Chandler. He's got the Lions, 72% available. Keep an eye on Aaron Jones' status. Tyrone Tracy Jr. against the Eagles, 55% available. Ray Davis, Jaylen Warren, Sean Tucker, Isaac Guerendo, depending on Jordan Mason, Kimani Vidal. See if he can carve out a role in this Chargers backfield. A lot of rookies on this list between Tracy, Davis, Guerendo, and Vidal. Let's move over to wide receivers with waivers. And Matthew, we start. I think this is the last time we're going to start with Josh Downs because he's now 52% available. If he's still out there in your league, somehow use the fab. But realistically,
I'll tell you,
it's over.
If he's still out there in your league, you play in the league of great guys. Like the complete opposite of our league.
The league of zombies.
Yeah, league of great guys.
The league of the blind, where the one-eyed man is king.
That's
right.
exactly right.
You could be that king.
You play in a league of the blind. You play in a league of, passively interested managers. Josh Downs has at least 25% target share in every single game he's had since he returned. He's averaging over 19 fantasy points per game the past 3 weeks. He's had at least 15 fantasy points in all 3. Now, I do think he goes down a little bit with the return of Anthony Richardson. Shane Steichen says it's not going to be Joe Flacco. It is not going to be last year's comeback player of the year, Joe Flacco. It is going to be Anthony Richardson under center. But still, Josh Downs, I think, is super talented. Connor, you've called this and you've said this for quite a while. Him, not Michael Pittman or anybody else. He's the most talented guy on this team.
He's just so good at generating separation, which means Anthony Richardson's going to have to be on top of things and get the ball out to him. Now, when they did play together when Downs was a rookie for those 2 games, things looked good. So hopefully they can keep that going. But I definitely agree, Matthew. There's a little bit of a downgrade when it goes from Flacco to Richardson specifically for Downs. But Jay, the schedule, it's solid, but I feel like Downs is relatively schedule-proof with the role he plays in the offense.
I think so. As we mentioned, it's a downgrade going to Richardson, and there's no one who dislikes Joe Flacco more than I do on planet Earth. But I will concede, he gives the Colts a better chance to win now than Anthony Richardson. Where Flacco got ruled in by surprise against the Titans, line immediately moved towards the Colts.
Yeah.
Anthony Richardson, they should be playing him. He's the future. He gives them a better chance at long-term success. But Flacco right now, he is the guy, and it's just as a pocket passer, he's just so much more refined. So we need to see it between Richardson and Downs, but the talent there is such. And also Michael Pittman, like the nagging back injury doesn't help, even though Pittman caught an amazing touchdown. That did not seem to have any issues with his back on that one.
But either way, Downs is. I would also say, by the way, Downs would be our number 1 pickup of all players. Like if he is somehow still available in your league, he'd be my number one pickup over any of the running backs here. Let's move to the Packers wide receivers. I think both guys, the injury to Dontavian Wicks looks like it's going to be week to week. And so, again, that opens up some target share. Christian Watson, fully healthy, according to everyone, including his father, has now scored in both full games with Jordan Love under center this season. His last 14 games with Jordan Love under center, dating back to last year, Christian Watson has 18 end zone targets, ran a route on 72% of his routes last week as well. So Christian Watson, who is somehow available in 59% of leagues, becomes very interesting. I prefer him to Romeo Doubs, but I think both guys need to be picked up. Doubs out there in 65% of leagues. He's played 3 games this year with Jordan Love. He's gotten at least one red zone target, I should say, in every game. 89% route participation for Doubs as well. Again, with Dontavian Wicks out with an injury, it becomes very simple. This is a fantasy-friendly, good quarterback team that has Jaden Reed in the slot and Watson and Doubs on the outside. And so they're going to go 3 wide a decent amount. Tucker Kraft's always a threat in the red zone, but yeah, Watson and Doubs are both viable going forward, especially as long as Wicks is out.
One quick note on Wicks, the latest from Packers head coach Matt LaFleur on his shoulder. We'll give him the week and see where he's at. I just know it's always a concern when you have a player that can't go back in the game, so keep an eye on that one. Jay, Chiefs wide receiver JuJu Smith-Schuster, yes, waiver wire relevant, only 67% available. He's got the 49ers after a week against the Saints where he has 130 yards receiving.
So here's how I would look at JuJu as kind of a concept, the JuJu concept. 2 years ago, when Patrick Mahomes won MVP, I think unanimously or close, and was the number 1 fantasy quarterback, JuJu Smith-Schuster, as the number 1 wide receiver who was healthy the whole season, finishes wide receiver 27, 11.6 fantasy points per game. JuJu was 2 years younger. This offense was more explosive and just more productive of yards. So I think that is realistically the best possible end outcome for JuJu, right? That he's wide receiver 27. And I don't think that's probably realistic that he gets there because just with this offense not humming the way that it was back then with JuJu being older, he played 52% of the snaps 2 games ago. Last game against the Saints, 67%. So I get it with JuJu. Like he's the number 1 wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. And I think that he might be a viable flex guy, but I'm not sure there's that much ceiling here. And I think that ultimately it's going to be more oriented, this offense, to Kelsey and Worthy as the deep threat.
I guess I'm going to paint a slightly more rosy picture, and maybe it's because I just picked him up in our League of Assholes because I'm so desperate. But the fact is like he had the second highest target share in Week 5, a 23.5% target share, 130 receiving yards last game, were the most by a Kansas City wide receiver since Tyreek Hill in 2021. And I would argue that the makeup of the Chiefs' wide receiver room this year is different than it was 2 years ago, where they had more veteran guys, they had more sort of options. Kelsey was also 2 years younger.
Kelsey's better. Yep,
you know what I mean? And this year they have no run game, right? I mean, it's they're rolling out Kareem Hunt or whatever, and JuJu can run all the routes that Rashee Rice, in terms of what their offense has become and the way teams are defending them. They're having to take all that underneath stuff much more frequently, and so JuJu, because he doesn't have that explosiveness, actually could. He was running all the Rashee Rice routes.
Same exact style.
He's playing it just not as good. But I think volume, like I would argue this. He's the number 1 wide receiver for Patrick Mahomes. And even though that statement doesn't have as much value as it did 2 years ago, there's still a decent amount of value in that statement. Quickly want to move over to Pop Douglas. DeMario Douglas had a 29% target share, including a season-high 9.7 average depth of target. He's had 3 games this year with at least a 20% target share, and in those games he's averaging 16 fantasy points per game. Drake Maye has given this offense a lift to make it, I don't know that it's fantasy relevant, but at least it's competent.
Some deep league wide receiver waiver targets. Darius Slayton, of course, has been a popular ad while Malik Neighbors has been out. Hopefully Malik Neighbors is ready to go this week against the Eagles.
Please.
Michael Wilson against the Chargers. He caught a touchdown last week. Xavier Legette also caught a touchdown. He's got the Commanders' secondary, which has been a good matchup for wide receivers all year. Rashad Bateman against the Bucks. Tutu Atwell against the Raiders. Bub Means, baby! Bub Means, the pride of Pittsburgh. He's got the Broncos. One quick note on the Rams.
On Thursday night. And Thursday night, Olavi in the concussion protocol. Shaheed.
Knee injury
that popped up yesterday. So Bub Meem's going to be out there. He got a 21% target share. So, again, if you're desperate, not a great matchup with the Broncos defense, but, if you're desperate, if you're in a league like we are, Bub Means will be picked up tonight.
Probably no Satan in that game.
Yeah, Satan has a concussion as well. To recap, Matthew's Week 7 top wide receiver waiver targets, of course, Josh Downs, if he's still out there, Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs of that Packers wide receiver room, JuJu Smith-Schuster against the Niners, Pop Douglas against Jacksonville, now that Drake Maye is starting. And speaking of Drake Maye, he kicks off our waiver wire quarterbacks. He's got the Jacksonville defense, which has been food all season. 94% available for Drake Maye. That is a London game. Sure, Matthew, the turnovers are there, but he threw 3 touchdowns, and he'll chip in, hopefully 3 to 4 points rushing for you.
That's the point. What you hope for, and honestly, this is going to sound insane. But I'd actually argue from a fantasy point of view, don't look at the screen, but from a fantasy point of view, he's actually a poor man's Anthony Richardson. He's willing to chuck it deep, and he gets you some points with his legs. I know that's not, wait, have you watched football, Barry? But I'm just saying, in terms of, what they do fantasy-wise, he's willing to chuck it deep, and he's going to get you some points with legs, and that's one of the things we love about Richardson in fantasy as well. How about Matthew Stafford, who's available in 63% of leagues, and he comes off the bye, getting the Raiders at home with potentially Cooper Kupp returning in Week 7. Puka a couple of weeks after that, but Stafford, who struggled earlier in the year, but now getting healthier. We've seen Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell and some of these other guys step up, and suddenly Stafford could become kind of interesting down the stretch as well here, Connor.
Jay, Andy Dalton, and so with Stafford, we're just waiting for his wide receivers to play. That's the key right there.
1,000%.
For sure.
By the way, it's worth seeing if Cooper Kupp somehow got dropped in your league. He's probably available, and probably not, but 99% rostered, but you never know.
How about Andy Dalton, Jay? He's got the Commanders. He's 90% available. Andy Dalton, he's been relatively productive considering what this offense has in front of him.
Yeah, just viable streaming option against your Commanders defense. The total in that game is 52. Jonathan Allen done for the season with his pick. Just the Commanders defense just doesn't have much, and Dalton, just him and Deontay Johnson, that's enough to get him to streaming capability.
Washington allows the 5th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, and to your point, already Allen's a big loss on that D-line.
How about the tight ends, guys? We talk about Cade being a viable streaming option week after week, especially during the bye. Zach Ertz coming off a good week. He had 5 targets. He made the most of them. 4 catches, 68 yards. Hunter Henry against Jacksonville. Drake Maye looked his way, 9 targets, 92 yards and a touchdown. Jatavian Sanders had 7 targets for 49 yards, Matthew. So some streaming options at tight end here in a wasteland this year.
Hunter Henry plays the Jacksonville Jaguars, who just gave up 2 touchdowns to Cole Kmet. No team's given up more touchdowns to the opposing tight ends than the Jacksonville Jaguars. You mentioned Zach Ertz against Carolina. Panthers actually bottom 10 in terms of most yards allowed to opposing tight ends. Very quietly, Zach Ertz second on the Commanders in targets as well. And Cade Otton, Baltimore, the 5th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Otton is part of, again, as you mentioned, Jay, you kind of want as much part of the Buccaneers offense as you can get as well. You know what league where Cooper Kupp's available? Guillotine leagues. People haven't been picking up because they don't want a 0 and they get cut. So Cooper Kupp out there in a bunch of guillotine leagues.
If you need to stream
start one today, by the way, for free.
If you need to stream a defense, the Saints against the Broncos, that's Thursday Night Football. Yeah. The Bengals against the Browns because they have the worst starting quarterback in football. And the Colts against the Dolphins because, listen, Tua's still not back, and the Dolphins are trying to figure this thing out on offense.
They really are. So I think those are all viable defenses if you play in leagues that still use defenses. These are ones.
Barbaric.
These are ones that you can do. By the way, Bo Nix has very quietly put up a decent amount of fantasy points. We talked about him on Monday as well. I know, it's crazy, but that's another guy that we would add on deeper leagues at the quarterback position. If you're in a 2-quarterback league, Bo Nix probably already rostered, but if he's out there, viable because of the rushing.
We're taking our first break. When we're back, we got a Monday Night Football recap as the Bills beat Aaron Rodgers in his head coaching debut. I didn't write that in the rundown. Blame producer Pete.
Investor, no, I need Josh Allen to beat George the Geek. I'm down 23 points because George the Geek had like all of, a bunch of stupid players just go off and off and off. So I need 23, I think, or 24 from Josh Allen today to come back and defeat.
And that he did. Matthew beats George. I'll call him George the Greek.
He calls himself George the Greek. Everyone calls him George the Greek, and then some viewer on FF pregame called him George the Geek, which I kind of like.
Credit to him. He scored the 2nd most points in our fantasy league this week, and that was not enough to beat Live at Noon on the cock.
No. And just, so this is what's crazy about Yahoo. If you ever are worried about, hey, oh God, AI is going to take over the world, it's got a long way to go because here. So we had the two highest scores in the league. It came down to the final drive of Monday Night Football for me to beat George. Unbelievable matchup between two really good teams, and yet mediocre proportions. And somehow George, I love to make fun of George, but how did George get a C? George did everything right.
He would have beat anyone else in the league.
He would have beaten anyone else in the league. He just got unlucky that he faced a buzzsaw in live at noon at the Cock, a desperate needing to win.
3-3.
Yeah.
49ers type
Well, we
buzzsaw.
lost two close ones to you and Lawrence, and unbelievable. By the way, first place in our league, Stupid Deb. Stupid Dev is in first place,
Dev's
by
good.
the way. And by the way, Stupid Dev, this is one of the issues when you have 25 teams like I do. When the news came out that James Cook was inactive, Stupid Dev went to the waiver wire and got Ray Davis.
There you go.
And,
He's the running back king.
Yeah.
By the way, a tale of two leagues for alternate producer Adam, who beat Pete in the League of Assholes for his first win. Shout out to Adam's first win.
Take that, Pete.
That's a big
There
one.
you go, take that, Pete.
Yep. He beats Pete in the League of Assholes, but unfortunately in the Guillotine League text chain, things did not go as well as Denny survives by a hair over.
Denny, you see at their top there, R.I.P. me. We thought he was dead.
Nope. He's alive.
Nope. And then, as you see there, in our show Guillotine League, unfortunately, Denny comes back to life.
So Adam
at the last second.
drinks for free.
So producer Adam
drinks for free.
Adam Wise.
Listen, we talked a lot about the Jets wide receiver situation with Davante Adams, the Bills running back situation, a ton through waivers. One quick note here, guys. Big night for Breece Hall with Todd Downing calling plays. A good sign for Breece and a not-so-great night for the Jets.
First game with 100 yards rushing this season. It was a season high in receiving yards. We bet the over on his receiving yards yesterday. That cash propped, as did Josh Allen's passing yards. That prop cashed as well. So really good here. You know what? If there's a positive for Dalton Kincaid, he finishes as the top 10 fantasy tight end. He's still a tight end one based on the position, and he had an 80% route participation, which was his highest since week 1.
Back to the futures right after our last break. DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Yours.
All right, guys, back to the futures as we do on every Tuesday. I'm taking the Packers to take the #1 seed in the NFC. That is plus 1,000. I believe in Jordan Love, and I think this team will get fully healthy at the right time. What do you got, Matthew?
Bears are 4-2. They're plus 160 to make the playoffs. They've got a good defense and a legit quarterback now.
Joe Burrow, speaking of legit quarterbacks, 17-1 to win MVP. That team can still go 11-6.
Closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Adam, Stupid Dev, Jay, and Connor, I'm Matthew Berry. Go Jets! Welcome to the team, Davante Adams. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.